Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome to our general waste discharge requirements for winery processed water. It's our fourth webinar in our summer series. And just a reminder, we call this very long titled order, things like the winery order, statewide order, permit order, and we're usually talking about the same thing. So thank you for that. Like I said, this is our fourth one, and the focus is on Napa County between a few different panelists today that I will introduce in a bit. And just thank you so much for your time today and engagement on the winery order. A little bit on housekeeping for Zoom. So this is a Zoom webinar, which is a little different than a Zoom meeting. Attendees come in on mute with their cameras off. Please use the Q&A icon to put in questions anytime during the presentations. The questions will not be displayed automatically to the attendees. We're going to go through these questions at the end of the presentations today, where we'll do our Q&A session. We'll read them out loud and then answer verbally. The presentations are being recorded today, but the live Q&A will not be. And if you need to leave the meeting, feel free to click on that red hexagon with the X and click end. So I wanted to introduce our speakers. My name is Laurel Wardrop. I'm in the State Board Waste Discharge Requirements Program, or WDRs. I'm joined today with Jennifer Chen, who's a Water Resource Control Engineer, Rebecca Greiner, who's an environmental scientist, and then the WDR teams from the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, or Region 2, and the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, Region 5. Napa County Environmental Health Division is also here with us today, representing the Winery Waste Program. So the flow of today, State Board is going to talk a little bit about the winery order in general, and then we're going to go through the region and county-specific information on winery waste discharges and implementing the statewide order. Then we'll go through some wrap and some contact information quickly, since we have a packed agenda today, and then we'll go on a quick break and go through our live question and answer session. A little bit about the water boards before we jump into the winery order. The State Water Resources Control Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Boards, they represent a lot of water quality, where Department of Water Resources is more on the supply end. And so we have the State Board headquarters here in Sacramento, and then we have those 9 regional boards that are semi-autonomous entities that have authorities over specific geographical areas in California, as shown on the map. And for example, today we're joined by the Central Valley, which is the blue area in the middle, and the San Francisco Bay region, which is that tan on the west. So collectively, the water boards, our mission is to protect water quality of the surface and groundwaters in California for things like swimming, fishing, and supply. And we do this through a lot of different regulatory mechanisms, where waste discharge requirements are one of those. And the authorities come from federal and state level. And, for example, the WDRs comes from the California Water Code. We have WDRs for thousands of different sites and facilities in California. Winery waste discharges to land are one of those categories. And there are a lot of different WDRs for winery waste in existence across the regional boards, but today we are focusing on that statewide winery order adopted in 2021. So between the state board where I work and the regional boards, we do a lot of coordination and a lot of collaboration on these different programs. And our role at state board is more the overarching implementation statewide and framework building, where the regional boards focus a lot on the permit reviews, approvals, inspection, and enforcement. And each region has a specific way of doing things to implement their region-specific basin plans, which also means they have their own way of doing things to implement statewide programs like the winery order. So if you're not sure what regional board jurisdiction you're in, we do have a website webpage that you can use. It's a really cool map tool where you can click on that and put in your address and find your region by location. The link on this slide will be live when we post the slides. All right, well, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Chen.
Thanks, Laurel. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jennifer at the State Water Board. Let's first talk a little bit about why we're doing these webinars. The winery order was adopted in 2021, and we're now in the implementation phase. That means we're actively accepting applications and we're enrolling wineries. Over the last few years, we've actually done a lot of outreach. We've sent letters to wineries. We made an eligibility survey. We've done presentations, and now we're doing these webinar series. We have more outreach planned for later this year that you'll hear more about later in the presentation. We've also been answering a lot of questions. We often get the same or similar ones sent to us through our mailbox or through phone calls. So we'll try to answer those today too. We recognize that we have a mix of winery dischargers. Some of you may be more comfortable and experienced with WDRs or waste discharge requirements. Many of you might be familiar with the water board's permitting in general, but maybe not specifically the WDRs. And some of you may be brand new to the water boards, the WDR program, or even the winery order. So our target audience for these webinars are really those folks familiar with the winery's operations and will be doing the actual implementation work, like filling out the applications. So for example, these might be the winery owners, operators, and for larger wineries, or maybe those with multiple facilities, maybe the environmental compliance officers. This also includes winery industry professionals like consultants and industry groups. And really the main focus here is answering the question, what do I need to do? When do I do it? What comes next? So for example, after I submit my application, and then finally, if I need help, who do I talk to? So really the purpose of these webinars is to help get everyone on the same page. We want to try to answer these frequently asked questions. We want to help inform and prepare dischargers and help reduce the confusion around the order. And also really importantly, we really want to provide resources. So you have what you need or you at least know where to find it when you do. So a question we get a lot is, don't I already have a permit? So let's talk a little bit about how the winery order fits into the water board's world. The WDR program issues and manages permits and conditional waivers related to wastewater discharges to land to protect water quality. The WDR program is only one of many programs within the water boards. These are all separate programs, and each one has its own water quality concerns. So for example, there are stormwater, irrigated lands, recycled water, and many more. Wineries will need separate permits from all the programs that are applicable to your operations. The winery order is also one permit out of many permits within the WDR program. So please keep in mind that there is not a winery program or a winery order program. It's actually the WDR program. The winery order was adopted by the state board, but it's implemented by the regional boards. It's a statewide general order, which means that the same permit can be used by all the regions for wineries throughout California. So this is different from, say, a regional general order, which is a permit that can only be used for wineries within a certain regional board's boundaries. So like Laurel was saying, we coordinate. We work together, the state board and the regional boards. We work together closely on the winery order, but we do each have our own separate roles. So the state board, here we provide information and tools that can be used statewide. And we also answer all the general questions. The regional boards, on the other hand, are a winery's direct contact. The regions are the ones who can answer your site-specific or region-specific questions. They'll be reviewing your permit applications, and they're also the ones overseeing the winery order compliance. So if you email the state water board mailbox, you may notice that we'll often answer your question, but then sometimes we'll also suggest that you contact the regional board. This is so you can discuss the specifics of your site and to also help begin building that relationship with them. Another question we get a lot is, where do I start? How do I get started? So first, take a look at the winery order. Try to figure out if you're eligible and if you need coverage by looking at the definitions and the tier breakdown in the order. Try calculating, measuring, or projecting the amount of winery processed water you'll be discharging each year, and that'll help determine your tier. So keep in mind that when we say discharge, we're talking about discharge to land. So that's processed water going into a pond, being land applied for reuse, or discharge to a subsurface disposal area. So I do want to highlight that word project, because you want to take a look at how much processed water you're discharging now, but also think about whether this amount is going to change in the short or a long term. If you're still unsure or you just want to confirm, you can always fill out the eligibility survey on the winery website. The next question is really, when do I apply? If you're an existing winery with no WDRs, apply now. If you already have individual WDRs, a conditional waiver, or maybe you're covered under a regional general order, you can either apply now or see what the deadlines are for your specific region's enrollment priority. If you've already been notified by the regional board to either apply or transfer over from an existing permit, take a look at the deadline in that notice. If you're a brand new winery, you have to apply for coverage at least 180 days before you begin operations. This is because you'll need authorization to discharge your winery process water. Let's talk about some things to consider as you begin planning. So first, assess and gather information for your winery facility or site as it currently stands. Now think about any facility or process changes you have planned and when you expect to do them. So for example, are you planning to grow your operations? Are you maybe putting in a pond? So what we're talking about here are material changes. A material change is something that will change the character, location, or volume of your discharge. You're required to notify the regional board before you make this type of change and submit a new application. Now compare the winery order requirements. Will these change between your current and future facility? Um, for example, are you currently in tier 2, but after you expand, maybe you'll be in tier 3, or maybe you realize that you'll actually still be in tier 2. So these are the questions you have to answer, and you can make these decisions for yourself and decide whether it makes sense to either apply for your current facility now and then submit a second application in the future, or if it makes sense to include all the changes in one application. So for example, are you planning to increase production in 2 years or 20 years? A helpful tool to help you compare these different scenarios and the different permit requirements is the compliance calendar tool on the winery order website. It's a spreadsheet where you can select your tier, your site features, and whether it's new or existing, and it'll show you which winery order requirements would apply and their deadline. Okay, so now that you're ready, how do you actually apply? The winery order has an application section with the enrollment details. The application itself has 3 parts: the notice of intent, the technical report, and the filing fee, which is equal to the annual permitting fee. Existing wineries also have an extra piece. These dischargers also need to propose a compliance schedule and include it in the technical report for the regional board to review and approve. This proposed compliance schedule lays out any facility improvements or changes that need to be made to bring your facility into full compliance of the winery order. So also take a look at the technical provisions in the order for any specific upgrades and their deadlines. So keep in mind, this compliance schedule is only for existing wineries, which are those that began operations before the winery order was adopted on January 20th, 2021. Anything new is expected to be constructed to already fully comply with the winery order. We sometimes get questions on turnaround time and when will an application be approved and when will I be enrolled. So the short answer is that it really depends, since this can be affected by factors specific to your site or maybe even specific to your region. So one of the goals of these webinars is actually to help improve turnaround time. We want to give you the information and resources you need to submit a more complete application. After you apply, it's also important to keep an eye out for any data requests from the regional boards, and please respond to those promptly. It's really common for the regions to ask for missing information or more detailed information that's needed to complete your application. This will really help the regional boards review your application more quickly, determine it's complete, and then to issue you a notice of applicability or NOA. This NOA is what authorizes you to discharge your winery waste to land. Okay, lastly, what if I have questions and I still need more help? So start with the winery order website. There's detailed information here. You'll also find resources, tools, guides, and links to things. You'll also find contact information for the state board and the regional boards. You can also email the state board winery mailbox with any general questions you have on the order, and your particular regional board. You can email any questions related to your specific facility, or if you want to know more about a regional board's specific procedure or requirement. There's also external support that you can reach out to, such as other wineries in your area, winery groups, industry groups, or even consultants. It's a great place to exchange information. There's also a few instances where you may need a professional certification or professional signature to comply with certain winery order requirements. There aren't many, but there are some. The important thing here is to remember to be informed. Know your facility, get familiar with your winery order requirements and which ones apply to your site, and it will really help you find the right help. So we're narrowing in on the order. So let's talk a little bit about how, we're narrowing in the order. We talked about the water boards, the WDR program, and also generally how to get started. So let's take a look at the warming order itself. We're often asked, why is the warming order so long, or do I need to do everything that's required in it? So part of the reason the warming order is so long is because it contains a lot of flexibility. That flexibility was intentional and also by request because every winery does things a little bit differently. The winery order covers multiple treatment and disposal options. It also has requirement off-ramps. It has triggers, which means that some requirements are not active and may never become active unless something triggers it. The order also has extended timeframes for planning and for bringing existing wineries into full compliance. So it's pretty rare, but not impossible, but it would be unusual for a winery where all the order requirements applied with. That would mean that your facility uses all the treatment and disposal options. You didn't or couldn't take any of the off-ramps, and you somehow triggered all the additional requirements. So again, it's pretty rare. The winery order is structured such that the requirements fall into these overarching categories. They're usually taken sequentially and will funnel you into the appropriate requirements for your site. So first take a look at the top level split, which is the tier. Is your winery exempt or in tiers 1, 2, 3, or 4? Next, what disposal methods do you use at your site? If you have a pond, take a look at those requirements. If you don't have subsurface disposal, you can skip those requirements. Also, when did your winery begin operating? Is it considered an existing or new facility? Are you applying because you're expanding something? Next, are you discharging processed water, processed solids to land, or both? So take a look at those requirements. There are also water quality considerations. For example, there could be water quality sampling results that trigger additional monitoring or maybe additional reporting, like a salt or nitrogen control plan. Okay, so let's take a look at the winery order itself. You may have noticed that the order doesn't have traditional sections or chapter numbers. That's because it's structured so that each individual requirement has a unique identifier so it can be referred to directly. This identifier is made up of alternating numbers and letters, and each sublevel is also indented for that visual reminder. So keep in mind that these paragraphs can sometimes get a little bit long, so you may have to look back a few pages to find the top level or the start of a requirement. So here are two examples. This first one is from findings. The call out is winery order, page 3, finding 12, subpart A. And so it's referring to this orange box. And because of the sentence structure, it refers to parts 1 through 4. This next example is from the discharge specifications, and I just picked one with a lot of sublevels. The requirement in the green box has a call out of page 36, specification D.1.A, .II.C.1. So you can see they can get pretty inset. So again, quick reminder to always look up to see if you can find the beginning of the requirement before you start. Let's also talk briefly about navigating the winery order. So I would never discourage anyone from reading the order from cover to cover, but it's pretty long and we're talking about getting started. So start with the table of contents. It'll help you find what you need. And once you get more familiar with it, the keyword search feature within the PDF is really helpful too. The order has 3 main parts: findings, hereby order, and certification. Findings will have your background information, rationale, more detailed descriptions of things. Hereby ordered has what to do, what not to do, and also compliance timeframes and milestones. So when you first get started, you want to look at the applicability and application sections. Those are the orange arrows because they apply to all facilities. In applicability, you'll find the definition of winery waste, how the tiers are determined, and the cutoffs for those tiers. In the application section, you'll find details of how to apply, what enrollment means, and it describes the NOA and its pieces. The green arrows point to certain features that only apply if you have those at your winery. So for example, if you have a pond, take a look. If you don't have a pond, you can skip those sections. So as you're reading the general order, keep those overarching categories in mind for your facility. So requirements are organized by those categories. So pay attention to the heading names and also the beginning of requirements, because it'll state whether it's for an existing or new facility, or maybe it only applies to certain tiers, like tier 2 or tier 4. The hereby ordered section is set up in the same way. The discharge prohibitions apply to everyone. When you look at the limitations, discharge specifications, and provisions, same thing. Keep in mind that some sections are for everybody, and some sections only apply if you're in a specific category. I do want to point out there are two discharge specification sections, one for tier 1 only and one for tiers 2, 3, and 4. Also, the technical provision section, like I mentioned before, has compliance timeframes for certain facility improvements and also requirements that only come into play if triggered. Lastly, for the attachments, take a look at attachments A, B, C, and G. These are the glossary, notes of intent, technical report outline, and the monitoring and reporting program. So it's really important, especially for the technical report and the monitoring and reporting program, really keep those categories in mind for your facility so you're finding the right sections for your site. And with that, thank you very much. And here's Rebecca with more information on the application and enrollment.
Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Greiner. As Laurel mentioned, I'm also with the state board. So far we've covered kind of navigating the order and its requirements, when to apply, and how to start planning for enrollment. So now I'll go into a little bit more detail about how to apply and where to get help if needed. Like Jen had mentioned a little bit earlier, if you're unsure whether or not the winery order is applicable, there is a self-guided eligibility survey available on the winery order website, and it's linked here in the lower left-hand corner. So once you've determined that the winery order is applicable, the application package must be submitted to begin the enrollment process. Jen had mentioned the 3 parts: the notice of intent, or NOI, the technical report, and the fee. So the first step in enrolling is submitting an electronic notice of intent along with the technical report and any other supporting documentation as needed. Next would be the application fee. That would be paid either electronically or via check. There is a fee payment guide on our website that helps make sure that your payment is processed correctly. And the application or filing fee is equal to the annual fee, which changes each fiscal year. And then finally, the third part, a signed copy of the notice of intent should be submitted to the regional board. There's a lot of important information about this step in the notice of intent help guide on our website. So please make sure to take a look at that, and we'll let you know who can sign and how to get it to a regional board. After you submit your application, the regional board will begin their review, and they'll reach out. They might reach out for additional information, requesting or having clarifying questions. They will reach out, and please respond to those as quickly as possible and as correctly and accurately as possible, as it'll help with the enrollment timeline. After the review is completed, the regional board will provide a notice of applicability. This confirms the winery's tier under the order, a monitoring and reporting program, and if applicable, an approved compliance schedule. And the monitoring and reporting program begins after the notice of applicability is issued by the regional board. So kind of summarized, it's the submittal of a complete application package with the electronic notice of intent, the technical report, and the signed notice of intent and fee. Then it will be reviewed by the regional water board, and then a notice of applicability will be issued. So the notice of intent must be completed online via the California Integrated Water Quality System, or CWICS. Via the CWICS electronic notice of intent module, you will be provided a unique Form ID number, as shown here in the orange boxes. This Form ID number is extremely important. It will be used throughout the enrollment process, especially when it comes to fee payments. So make sure you take note of that number, as well as the user email. That will also be important if you need to resubmit, or if you want to look at the submitted electronic notice of intent. So the arrows here are highlighting the questionnaire and attachments tabs. The questionnaire tab is where you will include your facility data, such as pond information, subsurface disposal areas, etc. And the attachments tab is where the technical report must be uploaded, and other supporting documentation can be uploaded here as well. And then on the slide here are the links to both the notice of intent online as well as that electronic notice of intent help guide. So it's been mentioned a couple times, but we really want to emphasize that the technical report is a required part of the electronic notice of intent submittal process for all applications. If a technical report is missing, an error during the form completeness check part of the submittal will appear, and you will be unable to submit your notice of intent until that technical report is uploaded. An outline of the technical report can be found in attachment C of the order, so take a look at that. And if you have any questions, please reach out to your regional board. So that's kind of the enrollment process in a nutshell. If assistance is needed or if you have questions, there may be answers on our dedicated webpage. Here is the QR code as well as the URL to that webpage. On this page, you will also be able to sign up for our electronic notices, such as information related to webinars, things of that sort. So this web page also has a lot of resources and information that could answer the questions that you have or questions that come up throughout the process. Here, each tab, this kind of outlines what the current linked guides and documents are on these tabs. So on the enrollment and fees tab, the two important ones to take a look at are the notice of intent help guide and the fee payment help guide. These will help expedite your enrollment process and make sure that it is smoother. So, and they may answer some questions that pop up while completing the electronic notice of intent. So each regional board has a contact email address as shown here. There's a separate tab that shows these email addresses, and these should be used if you have a question specific to the regional board or specific to your winery. If you don't know which regional board, as Laurel has in her earlier slide, there is a map tool that you can use, and the same map tool is linked here. For general inquiries, you can reach out to the state board at the email address that will be shown at the end of the presentation. And I will now hand it to the San Francisco Bay Regional Board staff.
Thank you. Get my slides up. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining today. I'm excited to be here. My name is Maggie Monahan. I am a senior water resource control engineer at the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board, and I manage a section that covers the wastewater discharges to land, recycled water, and our industrial and construction stormwater programs. And I've been with the Water Board about 8 years. And prior to the Water Board, I also worked in private industry for about 9 years, where my work was focused on wastewater. Okay, so here's again the map with the regional water board boundaries, and circled there is the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board. The regional boundaries you may be wondering like why they're set the way they are. Well, they're actually based on watershed basins. So that means that, whatever drains to the San Francisco Bay is in our region. And sometimes that means that the regional board boundary crosses counties and it doesn't align with county boundaries, such as the case of Napa County. And so we have a little zoom in there. Napa County is split between Region 2, the San Francisco Bay region, and Region 5, the Central Valley region. So this table includes our estimate of the number of wineries in our region per county. And these are only estimates, and the number of wineries that we'll need to enroll might differ depending on how winery process water is managed and the size of the wineries. But if you use this total estimate, about 25% of wineries have some kind of permit coverage for their winery process water discharge to land, and another 10% have submitted applications to enroll in the winery order. Napa County Environmental Health Division staff are here today and will be presenting later because the county is and will continue to be a key partner implementing the winery order for the wineries in Napa County. And we're currently coordinating with the county on their role with the winery order's local agency oversight program. Of the total estimated wineries in Napa County, 184 are permitted by the county and have been granted extended county permit for 3 years or until January 2027 before needing to transition to the winery order. Okay, and I wanted to briefly introduce the San Francisco Bay Regional Board team. So I have our photos up on this slide, myself in the top left, but we're taking a team approach to the winery order and processing applications and getting that large number of wineries that I just presented on the previous slide enrolled into the winery order. And so this team of folks, they're not solely dedicated to the winery order. They do a range of other things, but we have Zach Rokich and Sarah Acker in the top center there. They are the primary staff that manage the waste discharge to land program. And then we have on the bottom row, we have Tessa, scientific aide who just joined us about a month and a half ago. And she's just graduated from UC Berkeley. And then we have on the bottom, Jerry Zhu and Joe Monacle, who are actually in our stormwater program, but will be helping or are helping with winery inspections, as well as Jerry helps with winery applications. And then in the top right, we have Luis and I have Vasquez. He's focused primarily on recycled water systems, but also, handles winery applications and has a focus on wineries that are doing recycled water. And the bottom there's Julia Scales. She's another member of our team that helps. She's a staff service analyst that helps with the processing and getting everything into our databases accurately. And you probably noticed someone missing from this slide, Melissa Gunter. She's still at the water board, but she's actually moved on to a new position in our planning division where she's focused on recycled water. However, so that means she's not going to be as involved. She's been, working with the community and wineries for a long time now, but she's shifting roles. She's still at the board. She's on the call today and will still be, available to consult and help answer questions, but she won't be the primary person processing applications anymore moving forward. Okay, so in today's presentation, I'll give an overview of the winery applicable permits for our region, the San Francisco Bay region's application process, and then I'll turn it over to Sarah Acker to go through application tips. Then I'll take it back to go through next steps and resources and a little bit more about our coordination with Napa County. Okay, so the first part, overview of winery applicable permits. So as Jen mentioned earlier, there are lots of different water board programs. And in our region, wineries are generally subject to 3 on this slide: the waste discharge requirements for wastewater discharges to land, stormwater, industrial facilities that are, making wine are subject to the industrial stormwater general permit, and any construction activities that disturb greater than 1 acre would also need to have construction stormwater general permit coverage for the duration of the construction activities. And then we have vineyard permit. This is applicable to vineyard properties in the Napa River and Sonoma Creek watersheds. And so this map here shows the permitted watersheds in blue. The black dotted line are the regional boundaries. So again, yeah, the Napa River and Sonoma Creek watersheds are subject to the vineyard permit, which requires achieving performance standards for vineyard stormwater runoff and sediment discharges. Okay, so we're going to focus in on the waste discharge requirements for wineries, specifically requirements for winery process water discharges to land. I'm also noting here that a winery may have waste discharge requirements for their domestic wastewater discharges, but more typically, these septic systems or on-site wastewater treatment system, OTS, for domestic wastewater are permitted by the local agency, in this case, Napa County. So for the winery process water discharges to land, that could be for reuse or disposal. And the winery order is the general WDR, which is intended to cover most wineries. And this general permit is the most streamlined permitting option. I do want to address one question that we've been getting a lot before going further. What about commingled domestic wastewater and winery process water? Well, under the winery order, winery process water must be treated separately from domestic wastewater. So 2 separate treatment trains as depicted in this little simple process diagram there. An existing commingled treatment system with a subsurface disposal needs to be modified so that the process water is treated separately. Though the winery should still apply to enroll in the winery order now, it just needs to include a compliance schedule to modify the system so that those streams are treated separately. And then the streams may be commingled after treatment for discharge to a subsurface disposal area. And that's just so long as the subsurface disposal area is appropriately sized, designed, and operated to receive and treat both the processed water and domestic wastewater. So combined treatment systems are not eligible for coverage under the winery order. That doesn't mean they're prohibited from existing. In fact, we do have some of these that are already out there, but it does mean that they cannot enroll in the winery order, and additional regulations are triggered when domestic wastewater is introduced into the stream. So once you commingle domestic wastewater and processed water, it's all considered domestic wastewater. And you'll need a wastewater treatment plant classification and certified wastewater operator for any surface discharge or reuse. And if you're recycling the treated wastewater, you need to meet the uniform statewide recycling criteria contained in the California Code of Regulations, Title 22. And this includes daily total coliform monitoring for recycled water uses, among other requirements for the treatment. The photos on this slide do show an existing combined treatment system that treats both winery processed water and domestic wastewater, and it's a moving bed biofilm reactor. Okay, so in our region, your facility will fall into one of 3 categories for winery processed water discharges to land. The water board permitted facilities is shown on the left, and this is really a small bucket in our region. There's only 15 individual WDRs active across our region, but there are some wineries with individual WDRs that were issued prior to the winery order. The next bucket is a Napa County permitted facility. So if your facility is in Napa County, you could be in this unique bucket as an existing winery with an operational permit authorizing the discharge of winery processed waste to land issued by Napa County Environmental Health. And there are 100, I think actually the number is 184 existing facilities in this category. And they have been granted a 3-year extension directly from the county. So they've received something from the county, and you'll hear more about that in the county's presentation. So they have until January 2027 before they need to transition to the winery order. And then we have the largest bucket in our region, unpermitted facilities. And these include existing facilities without a permit, and their deadline to enroll was last January. I also want to point out another kind of sub bucket in the unpermitted shown on the right there. There's also a number of existing facilities in our region that submitted an application for their discharge to land to the Regional Water Board prior to the winery order, maybe even as far back as like the 1990s, or could have been more recently, and then they were never issued a permit. Maybe water board staff reviewed the application and okayed the discharge, or may have issued a letter that required monitoring reports, and maybe this winery is submitting regular winery monitoring reports to us. But all of these facilities need to submit a new application to enroll in the winery order. Now that we have the winery order, that's our main permitting mechanism. And if you submitted something in the past, if that's still applicable, you can reuse the information, but you do need to submit a new application to enroll in the winery order. And then, of course, any new facility that needs permit coverage for the first time needs to apply. So our goal is to permit as many wineries as possible under the statewide winery order. Okay, so a little about our application process. We wanted to provide you with a sense of how much time the process can take, so you're not surprised or frustrated or annoyed if you get comments back from us on your application. So the application is submitted via the electronic notice of intent. We'll typically have a staff person assigned within 1 or 2 weeks. We have a shared inbox that has someone kind of rotating who's looking at that inbox each week, and that person will help triage the case assignment. We don't have staff assigned to certain areas or counties right now. We're just using the team approach and kind of assigning the cases as they come in, and people have capacity or can make availability to process the applications. The first step is that the staff will do a completion check, and they aim to do that completion check within 30 days and notify the applicant of status. And if items are missing, the staff will inform the applicant, and typically the further processing would be on hold until we get the missing information. And so this is shown with a dotted line, as sometimes it gets sent back for being incomplete. Then the next that can start in parallel with that completion check is the technical review, assessing permit compliance and evaluating designs, evaluating any compliance schedules. And we do have bi-weekly team meetings to discuss questions internally to try to be consistent on how we're handling different scenarios, since every winery is unique and it's not always just a clear interpretation of the order and how to apply it. And almost always staff will have some clarifying questions or comments. So this is shown in a solid line. It's like pretty much always going to get some questions back. We're just sending these back by email, and then we'll wait for responses from the applicant before proceeding. Then we do a final permit verification. This can go pretty quickly. It kind of happens in parallel. This includes getting your account set up for the state database, checking in with the county to make sure everything's good on their side with any use permits, et cetera, and a final confirmation on the fee has been received in the signed application form. And then we also check status of other water board permits. But we won't hold up enrollment in the winery order, but we'll just kind of alert our colleagues if follow-up is needed on a different water board permit that's applicable. And then we will prepare the notice of applicability, or the letter that enrolls the winery into the winery order, and have that issued. It does require signature by our executive officer or a delegate. We do have templates for consistency and streamlining, though each one we insert site-specific information, and we have template monitoring requirements for our region for each tier. And this is based on the sample monitoring reporting requirements in the order, but there are a little bit of differences, generally a little less frequent monitoring for some things in our region, just based on what we expect we'd be looking for when we review it. Okay. So now I'll turn it over to Sarah Acker to present some application tips.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Acker. I'm one of the engineers at Region 2 who could be processing your application. So I wanted to give you some application tips today. So the first one is on the tier determination and providing a basis for this in your application. Wineries will fall into tiers 1 through 4 based on the annual processed water flow in gallons per year. And tiers 1 and 2 can provide an estimated or calculated flow based on the volume of wine produced per year and showing that calculation in the application. So here on this slide is an example calculation of what we would want to see. You can convert the number of cases of wine produced per year to gallons using the conversion factor of 2.4 gallons of wine per case, and then calculating the processed water flow using the industry standard of 5 to 6 gallons of processed water produced per gallon of wine. And if your flow is outside of this range, please provide documentation of why it would be outside of this range. And of course, if you have flow monitoring data, please submit that as well. The next tip is linking the annual fee payment to your application. So like Rebecca described, when you submit an electronic notice of intent, you get a form ID as you see in this slide. So please make sure to include this form ID on your payment method. You can pay online or via check, but you need to include the form ID so that our fees department can link your payment to your application. Next, you want to ensure correct name of facility owner. So the owner name should be the legal business name as registered with California Secretary of State. The owner name is often different than the facility name. For example, the owner legal name could be Two Winery Brothers LLC, and the facility name is Best Wine Winery. So please make sure to include the legal business name on the application. The next tip we have here is to ensure correct application signature. So the signer must be the legally responsible official or authorized representative, and this can be different from the winemaker. So for a corporation, a principal executive officer of at least the level of senior vice president can sign. For a partnership or individual or sole proprietorship, a general partner or the proprietor can sign. For LLC, either a member or manager giving signing authority by the operating agreement of the LLC, or a duly authorized representative of one of the above. And in this case, please also include a signed authorization representative form. And you can send a request for that form to our winery inbox. The next tip is about the site plan. As we all know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So please label all important features on the site plan. For example, the crush pad, the surface water bodies, and the discharge area. Clearly state what industrial activities are exposed to stormwater in processing areas, and indicate the locations of solid storage on the facility map. And lastly, I want to go over some common missing information that you do want to include in your application. The first is subsurface disposal systems design data. If your facility discharges to a subsurface disposal system, like a drain field, infiltration gallery, or dispersal area, please include the design data for the system so we can ensure that it complies with the winery order or how we're going to handle compliance with the order requirements. Please also include a compliance schedule if the facility is not in full compliance when they apply. What is the proposed schedule for getting the facility into compliance with the winery order? Also include the depth to groundwater below the pond or subsurface disposal systems if you have those features, and also include documentation of CEQA determination if CEQA has been completed. Now we'll kick it back to Maggie for next steps and resources.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Okay, for enrollment next steps, we're continuing to process applications received. We are going to work with existing facilities on compliance. If an existing winery cannot feasibly comply with all winery order requirements, we'll consider whether there are any resulting impacts to water quality and use our enforcement discretion on whether to pursue, that specific requirement. So there are cases we've seen so far where it's really not feasible the way the winery was designed for some things, but there's not going to be a resulting impact. And so we'll work with you and we can use our enforcement discretion. And moving forward, we'll be following up with facilities who have not applied in phases based on size and other factors. We do plan to send out the first batch of letters this year, as well as start conducting site inspections. The letter will notify the facility of the requirement to apply for coverage. It will include instructions on how to apply and our contact information. But I do want to emphasize that you do not need to wait for a letter from us to submit your application. If you are unpermitted for your winery processed water discharge to land, the deadline to apply was last January and you are past due, meaning you're discharging without a permit. And this is a violation of the California Water Code, and it does carry potential administrative civil liability. That is a potential for monetary penalties. Feel free to send us an email if you're not sure about your facility's permit status, or if you'd like to discuss the timing to submit your application or any other site-specific questions or concerns. Our goal is really to help wineries obtain winery order coverage and comply with the requirements in order to protect water resources. So this slide includes our contact, which has already been shared, our general inbox. I did want to also note we have a San Francisco Bay Region application process guidance that has step-by-step application and enrollment instructions and includes links. We sent that out to our winery email list last December, but if you didn't get it or if you're not on that list, just reach out to us and we can send that out, and also sign up for our email list so that you get featured, things like that. Okay, and then briefly, I just want to talk a little bit about our coordination with Napa County. So Napa County Environmental Health Division permits winery processed water discharge to land via subsurface disposal systems, as well as those with processed water ponds, by authority that was granted by the Regional Water Board some time ago. The Regional Board issued a letter back in 1979 that authorized the county. And then there was a memorandum of understanding between the county and the Regional Board established in 1982 and then updated in 1991 and updated again last month in 2024. In 2003, Napa County began permitting advanced treatment of winery waste with storage of treated processed water in tanks, followed by land surface discharge and in concurrence with Regional Water Board staff. And as mentioned, we just completed another update to the Memorandum of Understanding between the county and Regional Water Board so that they can continue to provide regulatory oversight and issue operating permits or maintain their operating permits for the existing wineries. And the MOU is interim until we expect Napa County will be officially authorized to implement the winery order via the Winery Orders Local Agency Oversight Program. We do have regular coordination meetings on a quarterly basis right now, and then more frequent as needed to discuss applications and any referrals and coordinate on permitting actions. So I'll leave the rest of the details on the Napa County's program to the later presentation from Armida of Napa County. But first, I'll turn it over to my colleague from the Central Valley Regional Board, Lonnie Andem. And here's a beautiful picture in Napa that looks like a pretty nicely lined pond with a fence around it. So I just want to show that nice picture. And I'll turn it to Lonnie now.
Thank you, Maggie. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
On my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Lonnie Andom, and I'm with the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. You'll also hear me refer to as the Central Valley Water Board, or Region 5. I'm a water resource control engineer in the waste discharge to land permitting unit. So the Central Valley Water Board consists of 3 offices. We have the Reading office, which handles the northern counties in the Central Valley, the Rancho Cordova office, which handles the central counties, and then we have the Fresno office, which handles the southern counties in the Central Valley. So part of Napa County falls in Region 5, which is handled by our staff in Rancho Cordova office. So who are we? Our program manager is Alex Mushagan. John Murphy is our section manager. Our permitting unit senior is Scott Armstrong. And then we have 3 permit writers, including myself, Dina Calancini, and Lee Sing Fu. So Napa County is located within Region 2, the San Francisco Water Board, as well as Region 5, the Central Valley Water Board. The red line shows the regional boundaries, facilities north of the Howell Mountains, including Pope Valley and the surrounding area near Lake Berryessa is under the jurisdiction of Region 5. And then facilities south of the Howell Mountains is under the jurisdiction of Region 2. So because Napa County falls in both Region 2 and 5, today's presentation is to provide an overview of Region 5's permitting application process. While there are some similarities between the 2 regions, there are programs and permitting requirements that are specific to Region 5, which I'll discuss today. I do want to mention that there is a winery webinar specific to Region 5 that will be held on September 10th. So today's presentation is a condensed version of that, but I do highly encourage and recommend you all to attend the Region 5 webinar in September. So today I'll go over an overview of the water quality permits specific to Region 5, and then the winery applicable permits, as well as our permitting process and the next steps and resources. So in Region 5, wineries may be subject to 3 water quality permits. In addition to waste discharge requirements, you may be subject to permits within our stormwater program, as well as our irrigated lands regulatory program. So with the stormwater program, you have the construction general permit, which regulates stormwater discharges from construction sites. And then we have the the industrial general permit, or IGP, which regulates stormwater discharges associated with industrial activity. And then we have the irrigated lands program, or ILRP, which regulates commercial irrigated agricultural operations. Operations for regulatory coverage include joining a third-party group or coalition or obtaining individual regulatory permits. Some more information on the stormwater and irrigated lands programs can be found on their respective program web pages, which I've linked here on the slide, as well as program contact info. So next, I'll discuss winery applicable permits. So wineries in Region 5 are enrolled in either the Regional Small Food Processor Winery Waiver or under an individual permit, also referred to as waste discharge requirements, or WDRs. So the waiver groups wineries into 3 regulatory tiers based on the amount of wastewater discharged to land. We have Tier 1, which allows up to 10,000 gallons of wastewater per year. Tier 2, up to 100,000 gallons of wastewater per year. And Tier 3, up to 1 million gallons of wastewater per year. The winery waiver will expire next year, or February 2025. And then we have the individual permit or WDRs. And those are for wineries who do not meet the conditions of the waiver. So the bulk of the wineries in Napa County are in Region 2. Currently, we do not have any Napa County wineries enrolled under the Region 5 waiver. However, we do have 2 wineries that were issued individual WDRs. So let's go over Region 5 permit path and process. So Region 5 wineries with existing permits, again, are either covered under individual WDRs or the Region 5 waiver. If your facility is covered under an individual WDR and your flows are greater than 15 million gallons per year, your winery can continue to be permitted under your current WDR. If your facility is under 15 million gallons per year and you are applicable for coverage under the winery order, you may continue to operate under your current permit until notified by the water board to seek coverage under the winery order. So facilities who are covered under the Region 5 waiver and your flows are less than 10,000 gallons per year, your winery is exempt from the winery order. We do recommend you go to the winery general order webpage and complete the survey. A record of your completed survey will document your facility as an exempt winery. So for facilities that are covered under the waiver and your flows are greater than 10,000 gallons per year, you qualify for coverage under the winery order. So as a reminder, the waiver does expire February 2025, and at which time, if you are not enrolled under the winery order, your winery will be unpermitted, and unpermitted facilities with an ongoing discharge may be subject to enforcement actions. Now, for unpermitted wineries, based on your annual wastewater flow less than or greater than 15 million gallons per year, you will need to apply for coverage under the winery order or individual WDRs. So here's a comparison of the regulatory tiers under the Region 5 waiver and the state board winery order. Both the waiver and the winery order categorizes wineries based on annual wastewater flows. The tier categories between the permits are not the same. And let's see, there are other differences between the permits. It's not shown on the slide, but there are more monitoring and reporting requirements in the winery order than in the Region 5 waiver. So here's an overview of the Region 5 application permitting process for coverage under the winery order. The application consists of a notice of intent, a technical report, and a permit application fee. Now, specific to Region 5 is confirmation of CV salts enrollment. Unpermitted wineries will need to comply with this as part of the application process. So the application, again, can be completed via the winery order webpage, or documents may be emailed directly to the Central Valley Water Board winery email address. Now, again, for Napa County wineries in Region 5, that email address provided on the slide is to our Rancho Cordova office. So as I mentioned earlier, there are programs unique to Region 5. It's called the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives for Long-Term Sustainability, or CV salts, which addresses salinity and nitrates in groundwater. So today's presentation is an overview of CV salts. More details will be provided in our Region 5 winery webinar on September 10th. But the main goals and priorities for CV salts are: one is to ensure and provide safe drinking water supply through both short and long-term solutions. Two, reduce salt and nitrate loading so that ongoing discharges neither threaten to degrade high quality waters nor cause or contribute to exceedances of water quality objectives. And three, implement long-term managed restoration of impaired water bodies. So specific to nitrates, this goal focuses on restoration of groundwater quality. So CV salts consists of two programs. We have the nitrate control program, which is prioritized by groundwater basins. Basins that pose the highest health risk associated with drinking water are shown in red. The next priority are those shown in orange. And the green areas are areas not currently prioritized, but maybe designated as a high priority on a case-by-case basis. So there are two paths for the nitrate control program, which I won't go into detail because, well, Napa County falls outside of the valley floor for the nitrate control program. And we have not been requiring facilities outside of the valley floor to comply with the nitrate control program. However, if nitrate is a concern for your facility, then your facility may be designated as a high priority. And then we have the salinity control program. So unpermitted wineries must enroll in a permitting path, either path one, which is the conservative approach, which is solely designed for permittees whose discharges have very low salinity concentrations. And then there's path two, the alternative permitting approach, which is participation in the participation and optimization study or P&O study. So the majority of the facilities within Region 5, and this is not specific to Napa County, do not meet the low numeric thresholds and therefore have selected path two. Participation in the P&O study requires that you meet the requirements of the Central Valley Salinity Coalition. And then a level of participation may vary based on salinity in the discharge, local conditions, and other factors. More information can be found on the CV Salts webpage, which I've included a link here, which also includes information on how to enroll and annual P&O study fee information. Again, just another reminder, CV salts will be discussed in more detail at our Region 5 winery webinar in September. So next steps. Enrollment next steps. State Board has sent out letters to all recorded wineries in all counties. We will process those applications received to date within Region 5, and this is specific to the counties under the jurisdiction of the Rancho Cordova office. We have received about 12 applications for enrollment. Out of the 12, I think only one is a Napa winery. So Region 5 prioritization plan for enrollment. Our main focus will be Tier 1 and Tier 2 enrollees under the waiver, and then unpermitted wineries, those resulting from any outreach activities. So this concludes my presentation. Just another reminder, the Central Valley Water Board Region 5 Winery webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, September 10th at 10 a.m. Again, there will be more information on our permitting process and CV salts. I've listed a few contacts here. Any questions you may have, you can email the Central Valley Region 5, the Rancho Cordova Winery mailbox. or you could also reach out to Scott Armstrong, our permitting unit senior, as well as myself, Lonnie Andom. And I've also provided links to the Central Valley Water Board Waste Discharge to Land Program webpage, as well as the State Water Winery Order webpage. And that's about it. I guess I will hand this over to the Napa County for their portion of the webinar.
All right, are you guys seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Armida Simpson Van Dam. I'm the Senior Environmental Health Specialist with the Wells and On-Site Wastewater team with Napa County. I've been running the winery wastewater program since 2016 and trying to improve it and kind of go along with all the changes. So the flow for my section of this presentation, I'm really focusing on kind of the process, the past, the present, and the future. And you'll see these kind of buttons, I guess you could call them, or boxes as a frame of reference through the presentation. And this is just to kind of help as a frame of reference in terms of where we are in the process of moving into the order and all of that. So as Maggie spoke about before, Napa County has been regulating process waste discharge to land since the 1970s. And we've had different agreements and MOUs over the years as well. But in 2021, when the order came through and came into effect, it really took over the regulation of winery process waste when it's being discharged to land. So that required that if Napa County was going to continue our program, we would have to create some kind of new agreement with the regional board. As stated earlier, in 2024, so about a month ago, we created a new, well, we've been working on the MOU for a while, but we came up with the agreement, got it signed, all of that last month. And that gives us permission to continue our program, which is great for the wineries that are in it. The difference with that, however, is that it really kind of froze our program in time. So what that means is we are continuing our program the way we were running it before, but we're not taking on any new facilities. So if a new winery is built, if there's changes to a winery that are significant enough, then they are required to go into the order. So, and again, that extended it for 3 years. So this leads us to kind of looking at that 3-year extension. And again, this is still in the past because the application for the extension was in the past. We are currently still in this extension period. But to qualify for the 3-year extension, there were kind of 2 main things that a facility had to fall into. They had to already have an operating permit for process waste discharge with Napa County before the winery order went into effect. And they also had to be located in Region 2. Then the next part of this was they actually had to apply. And I made the application very simple. It basically gathered information and then had an agreement stating that the facility would stay in compliance. And then they had to be in compliance. So they had to be reporting. They had to make sure that their operations were working correctly. So they weren't having a lot of spills, or if there was an issue, that they weren't just letting it continue, that they were actually taking care of any problems, and then that they were up to date on their fees too. So this just gives you kind of a view of, we had 223 applications. Some of those were duplicates, some of those were facilities that we didn't have operating permits for yet, or we didn't already have operating permits for, so we simply couldn't approve them. We had 184 that fell into kind of that qualifying realm. And then in that process, what I was doing was checking to make sure that they actually were turning in their reports, that they were compliant with our requirements. And in that process, we were able to get 99% compliance, which is kind of remarkable. So that felt pretty good for all of us. All right, so shifting to present time now. So any facility that produces process waste must fall into one of these categories for their operating permits for process waste. So we've already heard about the state order, which is the first one with the winery order. We've heard about WDRs with the regional board. County, we have two different types of programs. We have hold and haul, and that's a situation that we continue to regulate. That liquid is not touching the land, which means it doesn't fall under the order. So Napa County is still regulating those. And then we have our, like I said, kind of our three-year extension sort of frozen program where it's not changing. It'll continue for the facilities that applied that continue to stay in compliance until that deadline. The fourth one is if you're in a sanitation district, there's not a whole lot of these, but usually they require pre-treatment, and that's done through the sanitation district. And then there's a small handful of facilities that don't need a permit. So if they're conventional, producing less than 10,000, then they fall into that little category. It is critical, though, to understand that if you don't have a permit right now, then you need to be meeting those no permit requirements. If you don't have a permit and you don't meet those requirements, then you've got to figure out which group you fall into. And there's a good chance it's probably just going to be the winery order. And then make sure you're moving forward with that in terms of applying. Okay, so again, we're still in the present. So for facilities right now that they're going to find somewhere in this section that they fall. So if it's a new winery, you're just going to go to the order. If you're an existing winery and you're not permitted with Napa County, well, the deadline was in January, so hopefully you've already applied. Existing wineries that are currently permitted with Napa, make sure you stay in compliance and then you can remain with us. There are some exceptions though, so if you are expanding in a certain way, and those triggers are located kind of in the middle of the page. So if they are increasing process waste, increasing domestic waste in a commingled system, changes or addition of treatment, and changes in the disposal method. And so all of this is in the MOU. So you guys can kind of look through that, especially if this is relevant for you, if you're in our extended program. And then there's facilities who are exempt from the order. So again, that's under the 10,000. We will have a self-certification in the future through Napa County. Basically, facilities that fall into this realm, there'll be something for them to fill out stating, yes, we're under this, and we will track it just so that we're aware that you don't fall under that order. However, keep in mind, if you are exempt from the order, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are exempt from Napa County operating permit. This typically is going to be for a facility that has an engineered system. So if they're not producing much wine, but they have an engineered system, they're still going to require an operating permit through Napa County. And then building on the previous idea. So just to kind of explain for everyone involved, the general format for getting a permit is going to be the same. You're still going to go through the use permit process, and this is whether it's a new winery or you're expanding somehow. You're still going to get your building permits. You're still going to get your environmental health permits. You're still going to go through the normal process. The only difference is that now you just kind of have to throw in the whole winery application process as well. And we do require typically that we receive the NOA prior to issuing your installation permit. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that we're not approving something that you go and build and then it doesn't meet the requirements of the order and it doesn't meet what the regional board will approve. There may be cases where we can, get a nod from the regional board, but generally we're going to want the NOA because we want to make sure that you're not wasting time, money, things like that, building something that you're going to have to change. All right, and then moving into the future. So looking forward, our 3-year extension ends January 2027. We are planning on applying to become the local agency. And as mentioned before, we've been working with the regional board quite a bit. So we are on that track. And what that would mean is the program that we currently have, that would go away in terms of the way we're running it. And we would start enforcing the winery order. So if you're familiar with the old program, that's not going to continue forever just because we're the local agency. That would go away. And we would just be the kind of boots on the ground running it for the state. And then let's see what we can do for wineries and what they can address right now. And this is particular for Napa County regulated wineries. So right now they kind of have this grace period. They continue what they're doing, but it's really important that they start beginning to sample their water, do water quality sampling, gather flow data, figure out what kind of upgrades they might need. Of course, planning the money and all of those things. And then there's been some interest. Kim Withrow, my supervisor, her thought was to create an area-wide monitoring well network for Tier 4 facilities. And so this is something that a lot of facilities can come together. We have other groups that we'll bring in as well, and working together to kind of create this sort of network of monitoring wells. Hopefully that will reduce the cost and the difficulty of doing this. So if you want to grab a quick picture of this, there's a QR code. There's also a website. January 22nd of 2025, I'm hosting just a informal gathering of people that might be interested in this sort of network.
Just reiterating the collected contact information for our presenters today with State Board, San Francisco Bay Regional Board, Napa County Environmental Health, and the Central Valley Regional Board.